No, thank you all for hanging around. I know it's been a long day. Glad to be here. Glad to represent Troy University. Humbled to follow Coach Larry Blakeney. I know a lot of you all miss him, and I do too. Excited to be back in the Sun Belt Conference. It's changed quite a bit since I left in 2009. I think it's more competitive. It's a much improved league. Brought two guys that are great representatives of Troy University, running back Brandon Burks and our defensive end bandit Tyler Roberts. Two great guys. Tyler will graduate on Friday with a degree in accounting, and Brandon will graduate in December with a criminal justice major. So two great representatives. Looking at the preseason predictions and things like that, I think people have low expectations for year one and coming back to Troy. I think we're picked 8th to finish in the league. We had only one first team Sun Belt representative, 2 on the second team, and we got no ESPN midweek games. So, like I've talked to our players about, I think you either prove them right or you prove them wrong. So we're going to have an opportunity starting against North Carolina State there in week 1. Proud of the history of our program. I did some research on the drive down. Like most of you, probably got stuck in some traffic on I-10. But Southern Cal and Troy, both Trojans, I don't think by any coincidence, only schools in the 2000s that have won 5 consecutive conference championships. We have 3 national championships at Troy, so we're proud of our history, and we're hungry to get back to the top of the Sun Belt Conference. We've had great administrative support since I got this job in December. I want to make sure that that's known. Gave us a great salary structure to go out and hire a tremendous staff. I think we've put about $600,000 into facility upgrades in our field house and some other things for our student athletes. And I'm pleased that our North End Zone project is on pace. And hopefully we can break ground there in December, and that'll have a completion date sometime spring, summer of 17. And our administration has made the decision to move ahead with cost of attendance. So we're excited about that. And with that, I wanted to open it up for questions.
This will be your second stint serving on the coaching staff here at Troy. Last season, you did too well from a record standpoint. What's your plan headed into the fall to improve on those numbers?
Well, I think what we set out since December 1st when I got this job, got the opportunity to come back to Troy University, was really focus on our culture. And the two things that we've focused on the most is discipline and accountability, bringing discipline back, focus on details, and accountability, not only to ourselves, but our university and our teammates. So I'm pleased with our kids. If you look at it, we had a 3.02 GPA in summer 1. We had a 2.8 overall in the spring. I think 37 guys had a 3.0 or higher on our football team, so they're buying in. Our buy-in factor is high. This is the 3rd time that I've been on the front end of a staff. You go back to Texas Tech with Tommy Tuberville, Mark Stoops at Kentucky, and then here is the head coach, and this has been the highest buy-in factor that I've seen. So, as far as what our goals are going into it, I think our goal within our program, and I'm not scared to say it, we want to be the most improved team in the country and the most improved team in the conference. And I think that there's a couple of things you can look at yourself at. We finished both after 100, total offense and scoring defense. So we were looking to improve that. We want to lead the league in turnover margin and cut down on penalties. And I think we can do that and be one of the top or most improved teams in the country.
Question. It's no secret. Everyone's been offenses love to throw the ball, and you're no different. So now that you're back at Troy, will you all establish that, or you want to keep the offense 50-50? What's the offense going to look like?
Well, I think as a play caller, you always want to build your offense around your best players. And I think right now our most talented players are at running back. We have 2. Brandon Burks, who's here. He's a speed guy that can hit it inside and outside. And we have a big running back named Jordan Chun, who's one of the leading touchdown returners in the Sun Belt Conference. So we've got a big back in Chun and a all-purpose guy in Brandon Burks. So we're definitely going to run the football. Excited. I think anytime you have a quarterback, you have an opportunity. And Brandon Silvers is our quarterback. Set the all-time NCAA record for highest completion percentage as a freshman. And he's obviously an accurate guy. He's a better athlete than people recognize. And I think he's going to show a tremendous amount of improvement going into year 2 as a starter.
Two-part question. First of all, the defense has been kind of the Achilles heel for Troy over the past few years. How has the progression been through spring and summer, and how much will you be relying on a freshman class that you have some depth issues in the spring?
Yeah, well, Jeremy, the first question, I will say this, is my background is on offense. But I do know this, is you cannot build a championship football program or a championship team without a strong defense. So I've committed to a lot of our financial resources to our defensive staff. I've placed an emphasis on defensive recruiting in the first recruiting class and now in our second recruiting class as well. So we're going to play defense at a high level. How quickly that's going to happen, I'm not sure. And as far as our overall, I don't know where our team's at. And I know a lot of head coaches are going to get up here and say, hey, this is where we're at, this is where we're going to go. And quite frankly, we went through spring. We haven't had any adversity on the football field yet. And I haven't been in the league since 2009. It's a lot changed. I'm not sure what else is in the league, where the other teams are. So I think there's a lot to be said for that. Defensively, I think we're gonna be strong rushing the passer. Tyler Roberts, Rashad Dillard had a great spring. Sam Levy moving down, and we're going to be able to rush the passer. We've got to be able to establish and stop the run. That's where teams have had a way with us in the last several years at Troy. So we're going to have to do that. As far as playing freshmen, I think at certain positions you can rely on freshmen. Defensive back, wide receiver. Those are two areas that jump out that you can play freshmen. Now, would you rather play seniors? Of course, but I think that's a position from just from a physicality standpoint you can come in and play. I think we will have to probably depend on a couple defensive linemen just because we're thin at that position, and that keeps me up at night a little bit.
You mentioned the quarterback's very high completion percentage and it's very impressive, but there's no real, as shown last year, deep threat and wide receiver averaging only 5.8 yards per attempt. Has there been an emphasis to try and find that deep threat wide receiver? Yeah,
we've got to create big plays. I think that's something we've been able to do. Even last year at Kentucky, playing a lot of young guys, but if you go back to Texas Tech and at Troy, especially in 2009, we've been able to generate big plays within our offensive system. And we do have a couple guys that are capable of making big plays. Brian Holmes is a kid that's been honorable mention, I think, 2 years in a row at wideout as a sophomore and a junior, and he has high-end speed. He's a guy that can get over the top. And we've got to, some of it goes into, you've got to challenge your guys. One thing that we really talked about in spring practice was making the first guy miss and having runs after contact and runs after catches. And the other thing too is you've got to prepare yourself, because every time you take a shot, we call them shot plays. If you're going to take a shot play, you better be able to come back and have a play that you feel real good about getting 5 yards so you stay out of third and long.
Coach, you talked about your experience on the offensive side of the ball, but your previous stint at Troy made his name defensively.
It did.
How much of a factor was that in trying to rebuild that defense to get back sort of that attitude, and how can you go about doing that? Well,
the first thing was bringing back Vic Coney, who really started that run on defense 2003 and 2004 during his first stint. 2004 had a top 10 ranked defense nationally at Troy. Able to get him back in the fold, which I'm really excited about. He left Troy top 25 defenses at Clemson, had the single biggest turnaround at Kansas State, then goes to Illinois and has another top 10 defense, and then on to North Carolina. So I understand that was the biggest hire on my end, was to hire a defensive coordinator. I wanted to do that, somebody that was really aligned with our way of thinking offensively, and he understands that we want them to attack and try to create big plays. And I think his philosophy and mine mirror each other. But that was a huge hire for us. Excited about bringing him back into the fold. Obviously, the other guys on our defense staff, John Summerall, Al Pogue, and Bam Hardman will make a big difference as well.
Coach Brown, you said you're very excited and proud of the tradition and history that the football program has. But you also have to put your kind of own stamp on it. The hashtag rebuild the wall, some changes here and there in the field house and all. How important is it for you to remember the history as you just addressed, but also put your own personal stamp on it?
Well, we do. I think the best indicator of future performance is past. In the past at Troy is really strong. Now, over the last 4 to 5 years, the results haven't been what anybody wanted. Nobody within the program or our shareholders outside the program. So you want to honor that tradition, not only as a Division I member, but what we did at winning a national championship in the NAIA level and the Division II level and making the playoffs 7 out of 8 years in 1AA. You want to honor that, but also understand that it's a new era in college football. And we've had to make some facility upgrades, which we've done. Like I said, a lot of support goes to our outgoing AD John Hartwell and our Chancellor Jack Hawkins, they've made a commitment to our football program. And then with the completion of our end zone facility in 17, I think our facilities, not only athletics, but as a campus as a whole, is going to put us in a position where we compete for the top student athletes in our conference. The other thing too is, if you look at, there's been a lot of social media changes. That's how you recruit in this day and age. A lot of credit should go to our recruiting staff and our sports information staff. They do a great job in those areas. And the other thing is we're going to make some obvious changes uniform-wise. You can see the helmet today, and we're going to do some things different with our uniforms and with our helmets, and that's all with recruiting in mind. We want to take care of the players that are on the team now. And I'm a big believer in, if you want to get guys the two ways of their hearts to a college football player's hearts, through gear and through food. So if we can give them as best gear we can and we can feed them the best we can, then we got a chance for them to play for us.
Coach, you touched on it. I said you were speaking of all the recruiting and how to get the recruits down into the program. How has it been being a young coach like yourself and coming back to Troy and throwing the balls? How's that affected recruiting positively?
Yeah, well, we stand in a really fertile recruiting area. We don't have to go outside a 4-hour radius very often. Georgia, Alabama, Panhandle, Florida, into Mississippi, a little bit of junior college. That's been a good recipe for us. It worked when I was here the first time. So, there's a lot of players within a small area, and a lot of the reason behind the success when I was here before is we had a lot of small town guys that play with a chip on their shoulder. Alabama's, the Auburns, Florida States, for Georgia's, for whatever reason, they didn't get the scholarship offer, so they came to Troy to prove a point, and we played the game fast, hard, and physical, and we're able to win conference championships and go and play those bigger schools and beat them, or at the very least compete against them. And I think youth is an important factor in recruiting. I think it'll be something that benefits us. I get that question all the time, and I really don't look at it as a negative. I look at it as a positive. Not too long ago I went through the same experiences they're going through. Sometimes I still think I can go through it. About one play is maybe all I can get done these days. But I think it's something that definitely helps in the recruiting process.
You mentioned about the change in the uniforms. Will that take effect this season or something?
Yes, yeah. That'll be this season, and we got a great partner in Adidas, and they've been very willing to work with us. And you'll see some new uniform aspects this year, and then more so going into the 16 season as well.
Coach, you have a very difficult out-of-conference slate.
Yeah, you reminded me. We got 2 weeks in summer left, man. You reminded me.
So, how's that going to influence, especially now that it's your first year as a coach? How's that influencing your prep and your team, and are you worried about getting knocked up before the Sun Belt season gets in here?
Yeah, it's a challenge. Our schedule is not ideal. It's some odd circumstances led it to it. We open up with NC State, who I think was one of the hottest teams in the country last year, closing out with a big bowl win. They got a quarterback, Jacoby Brissett, who's going to be a Heisman contender, I believe. They're going to be a top 20 football team this year. And then week 2, we play an FCS opponent, Charleston Southern, who our Achilles heel the last few years has been stopping the run. Oh, by the way, they're one of the best rushing offenses in the FCS, so that'll be a challenge. And then week 3, going to Madison, Wisconsin, one of the toughest venues in the country, top 10 defense there, top 10 program there, and then having a much-needed bye week. And then we play South Alabama, a game that we want to put a lot of emphasis on as a rivalry game, and then play Mississippi State the week after. So the front end of our schedule is really challenging. And moving forward, from a scheduling perspective, what we would like to do is we'd like to play one financial game, an FCS, and then home and home, 2 home and homes, and that's what we're going to do in 2016 and moving forward.
Coach Stoops said last week how he thought you did an exceptional job at Troy, very organized, have a great plan. How are you holding up after 8-9 months, and where do you think you are, and whatever plan you do have laid out for before the season starts?
Yeah, well, I appreciate Mark saying that. A guy that's been a really good friend to me, a great mentor. Probably learned as much during those 2 years watching him transition from a very successful coordinator into that head coaching role, and learned a great deal from him. And I think nothing but great things in store for Kentucky. I think they're really going to make a statement this year. So I really appreciate him saying that, first of all. And we're on track. It's like I talked about with our football team as a whole. We hadn't faced a whole lot of adversity, and so I don't know if you really, the job doesn't start necessarily until we get some adversity. I really believe that. If I could talk my 5-month-old to sleeping through the night, things would be going a lot better.
Coach, can you talk
talk about the addition of former Foley head coach Todd Watson to your coaching staff?
Yeah, tremendous. It is, right after Vic on defense and convincing some of these guys to come back to Troy and still be a part of Troy, that's been as good a hire as I could possibly make. Todd's been a great asset to us. I didn't really think about it. My whole background is in education. From my dad being a coach and an administrator, and really my mom a teacher, my wife's a teacher. Her side of the family's a teacher. 3 out of my 4 grandparents are educators. So at the heart of who we are, we're teachers. And I never really thought about it till bringing Todd on the staff, is how much being a head high school coach at one of the top programs in the state. There's a ton of administrative roles that go into that, and there's been a lot of carryover from him coming from Foley to Troy, and he's been a tremendous help. Being a liaison to the administration, helping on a daily basis when we're out on road recruiting. But I can't say enough about the job he's done.
How will Brandon fit into your offense?
Yeah. Well,
what can you expect?
Yeah, Tommy, the thing that's been consistent, really starting in 2006 when Tony came as a coordinator and I was receiver coach, is from a pass game perspective, it's really stayed the same. And a lot of the patterns that we're going to use are the same ones they utilized when Kenny was calling the plays the last 5 years and doing a really good job of that. So I think you're going to see a big growth in him. I think he was a little apprehensive at times last year. He got a little beat up, especially toward the end of the season. Missed some time with a back injury. He's more healthy. He's stronger. His body's in better shape. I think he understands. It's slowed down. Anytime you play early in your career, the game is really, really fast. And I think it speaks well to his ability that he completed at such a high rate. Now what we've got to do is you may see his completion percentage come down a little bit because now he has a little stronger belief in his system, in himself, in his system. He's not scared to make mistakes. So I think you're going to see per attempt go up. Maybe his completion percentage come down. The other thing too, I think you'll see a lot more this year is he's got the ability to run. He's a guy that's a good athlete. He's a good sized kid, almost 6'3", 215, 220 pounds. And he runs well, and he's a good natural runner.
Coach, can you talk about the rivalry with South Alabama and you coming in as the head coach? How are you going to look forward to that?
Yeah, I think it will be a rivalry game. And a couple of their players in the back, got the chance to talk with them last night. Great kids. We're supposed to use the term student athletes now, so great student athletes. But that's a game that's important. It's important to them. It's important to us. It's a game that we're definitely going to circle on our schedule moving forward, and we want to place a lot of emphasis on it. It's a relatively young rivalry, but it's a game that I think the people in the state can rally around, and hopefully there's a lot of interest in that game.
Coach, running back.
Yeah, I think Brandon is really sitting on what I think is a breakout year. And I think Silver's growth and Burke's growth are going to go hand in hand, because the better the Silvers can play and we can create plays down the field, the better our running game is going to be. You're going to see a little different running attack than when we were in Troy the first time. As going from into the Big 12 and then coming into the SEC, we've evolved what we're doing. Putting a more emphasis on being a physical team. There's this misnomer that you're a spread team, you can't be physical. There's nothing further from the truth. Physical is a mentality. That's how you go about your business every single day, whether it's practice, whether you're off-season workouts. Being physical is not a system, it's a mentality. And we have the mentality that we want to be a physical football team. And we're going to be physical, and we're going to run the football. And Burks, who's I think's had 2 really good years in a row, he's got an opportunity, I think, to be the only Troy Trojan to lead our team in rushing 3 years in our long history. So I think you're going to see a big jump if he can stay healthy in his production this year.
Coach, what are your thoughts on the Raycom Media Pavilion Bowl and Montgomery, the place you guys recruit down the road this year, next year, get to play in that game?
Yeah, I think Johnny Williams has done a phenomenal job with that. The thing that really stuck me out just as a fan is how many local people supported that game. The Crampton Bowl's been remodeled, renovated, however you want to say it, and that it really looked good on TV. I was at home living in Kentucky at the time watching that game, and was really impressed with just the local support. Obviously, it's a natural fit for us. We've got several Montgomery kids on our team. That's a place where we've really added a lot of influence, where we expect to sign kids every year. Al Pogue recruits that area. Very successful high school coach at a couple different places in the Montgomery area, and we were able to sign 3 out of there. But that's a game that's very attractive to us and our fans.
Last question. just to touch on it earlier, they were talking about the expansion in the Sun Belt. What's your take on possibly adding 12 teams, and do you have an opinion one way or another?
No, I don't. I think moving forward, I think the bigger question is are we going to play a league championship game? You know, I think from an expansion standpoint, and I think Carl talked about it, and several guys before me at the podium have talked about it. You know, it really makes more sense from a basketball perspective. People above ours, you know, at the chancellor level and the AD level are going to make the decision on the expansion. I think from our league playing a championship game, I think it comes back to if we can get that game on national television and we get more exposure for the Sun Belt Conference, then yeah, I think it makes sense. Anybody else? Yes, Jeremy.
Yeah, what do you think of an early recruiting, early signing?
Early signing day. Yeah, I think there's some momentum for that. I think we've probably still got to do some more research. Todd Berry, who's on the rules committee, who is really high ranking in the AFCA, the American Football Coach Association, on the board. We were talking earlier. One thing that I really feel passionate about is giving guys an opportunity to take official visits at some point starting after signing day. Or after February of their junior year. I think one of the things right now within the recruiting process, it's sped up, and there's so many guys are having to take unofficial visits. If you look, a lot of schools have, you know, double-digit commitments, almost all into the 20s in commitments during this time of year, and they're all doing that based on unofficial visits. You know, from a financial model, I don't think it's fair to the prospective student athletes. I think we should give them the opportunity to start taking official visits at the end of their junior year. That makes sense to me. And also, I will say this too, and I know Paul Johnson is behind this, and I've on Twitter today I've seen a couple of the SEC coaches talk about this. I'm in favor of, you know, we can eliminate as a coaching in the coaching world, we can eliminate these soft commitments and those type of things. But it's saying, hey, if you offer a scholarship, here's your letter of intent, sign it. If they sign it, they're locked in. If they're not, then you know that hey, they're not all the way in. So I think that's something else we should look at. Anybody else? Appreciate y'all coming, sticking around this afternoon. Thanks for what you do for college football, Troy University, and this league. Thank you.